Good evening. The entire Hindu community is shocked over the alleged suicide of Mahant Narendra Giri. Today, CNN News 18 managed to procure a 15-page suicide note which was purportedly written by the Mahant outlining why he was taking this extreme step, why he was forced to take his own life. But people close to him are asking, how can a man of few letters, someone who could not even sign his name properly, how could he write a 15-page suicide note? How could someone who was acquainted with the rich and powerful like the Mahant was, how could he not have approached somebody in some degree of power to explain who was blackmailing him or what is it that he was going through? Yes, the three people who have been named in that suicide note have been arrested. But the larger question we're asking is, are there other, perhaps bigger names involved? And if so, will it come out at all? But first, the story so far.
Narendra Giri, the Mahant of the Bagambari Mutt, a man who was also the head of the powerful Akhada Parishad, had ended his life in his own mutt. The shockwaves intensified when Anand Giri, Narendra Giri's high-profile disciple, was first detained and then finally arrested.
महाराज जो है रस्सी पे फंदे पे लटक गए हैं। मैंने पूछा कहाँ है महाराज, तो कहें कि वो जल्दी हम लोगों ने काट के उनको उतार दिया है। यहाँ हम लोग जब आए तो देखे कि महाराज को जमीन पे लेटे हुए थे।
It is this 15-page suicide note that has raised doubts about the police's suicide theory. The suicide note named Anand Giri along with two others. Narendra Giri in the suicide note allegedly says that he was under severe mental pressure because of these three, especially Anand Giri, and that he was being blackmailed for a video. He also claimed in the suicide note that he was driven to the edge because Anand Giri for the last 2 days was threatening to make a picture of him with a woman go viral. Anand Giri came out and made an equally sensational claim. Narendra Giri could hardly even sign his name, he said. Then how was it possible for him to write a 15-page suicide note that also doubles up as a will? Anand, who was thrown out of the mutt early this year after differences with Narendra Giri, says he's being framed.
हमारे गुरुजी की हत्या हुई है। ये बहुत बड़ा साजिश है। षड्यंत्र के तहत सबसे पहले मुझे उनसे अलग किया गया और आज उनको मार दिया गया है और मेरा नाम डाल करके मुझे भी खत्म करने की साजिश की जा रही है।
Narendra Giri had good relations with politicians cutting across the party lines. Akhilesh Yadav's demand seeking a probe by the sitting judge of High Court hints of opposition's doubt over the suicide theory and the fact that how the death can become an issue of larger political implications in the state headed by a yogi. Pranshu Mishra in Lucknow for CNN News 18.
All right, so there are some big questions that are being raised by this purported suicide note written by Mahant Narendra Giri. Number one, how did a person of few letters, admittedly someone who couldn't even sign his own name, how could he pen a 15-page suicide note before taking the extreme step? Why commit suicide? And remember, in this note itself, Mahant Narendra Giri says that there is an alleged photograph that is doing the rounds which shows him and a woman, which is fake. He mentions that that photograph is fake. So for a fake photo, why would he take the extreme step? Number three, what is it that changed? Remember, back in May, end of May, 26th, 27th May, there was some form of resolution between him and Anand Giri. So what changed between May and September for the Mahant to take this step? Number four, why didn't his security? Remember, he was somebody who had Y category security, which means 24/7 there is a personal security officer and there is also a beat constable outside his residence. Why did they not sense that something was wrong with the Mahant? And number five, and lastly, how were his aides? Remember, he is the head of the All India Akhada Parishad. He's a man of great power. He's acquainted and surrounded by people all the time. How is it that none of them were able to read his state of mind, or how is it that he was not able to turn to any of them to speak what was going through in his mind? And number six, was Mahant Narendra Giri being blackmailed by someone, And if so, by who? Let me get in our guests. Arvind Kumar Jain is the former DGP of Uttar Pradesh Police. Anila Singh, spokesperson of the Bharatiya Janata Party. Ratan Sharda, RSS thinker. And Kartik Chopra is the spokesperson of the Nirmohi Akhada. Mr. Jain, I'll start with you as an investigator. I'm sure you've gone through this 15-page, alleged suicide note. In your experience, for somebody who was in such a seat of power, acquainted with so many people who he could turn to, does this suicide note stick up as, normal? This can happen to anyone? Or are there holes and question marks as far as you are concerned in this particular suicide note?
If a person is threatened by criminals, mafia, then he can share it with Chief Minister or Deputy CM or senior police officers. Because I know several police officers also used to visit the mutt, and they were his followers. There are certain things which a person would not like to share with politicians also. And I think because of that evidence, because of that video or something, Anand Giri was, I think, blackmailing him. And I don't think Narendra Giri will ever discuss it with Yogi Ji or with Akhilesh Yadav or others or seek their help in such a matter.
No, but Mr. Jain, no, this is not an ordinary person, right? He is someone who I believe, 2 or 3 days before his death, the UP Deputy Chief Minister had met him. And admittedly, in Keshav Prasad Maurya's own words, Mahant Narendra Giri used to treat him like his own son. Now, are you telling me that even such a highly influential person who is acquainted with, the number 2 man in the state was not in a position to reveal his state of mind or reveal who is it that is blackmailing him?
You never know what is the reaction of a person. Different people react in different fashion. I don't doubt this suicide note.
Okay.
Even I have discussed with so many people at Allahabad. I have studied at Allahabad University for long. So I have also discussed it with so many people, and they say that it is authentic, and he was disturbed. He was keeping to himself. He was not talking to many disciples or people. He used to remain in his room most of the time. And I think he was contemplating it for some time. Because if this is the fake note, then the entire theory will be overturned.
Okay, so let me then ask Anila Singh, what is curious for me is, aside of everything that I asked Mr. Jain, there seems to be sort of discrepancies between what the suicide note is saying on the one hand and what the FIR is saying. The suicide note clearly mentions blackmail. No provisions of blackmail have been included in the FIR. The suicide note clearly mentions 3 names, and obviously those 3 names have now been arrested, but the FIR does not mention any of those 3 names. And the question that I asked Mr. Jain, here is somebody who is so powerful, who is influential, who is acquainted with the powerful people of Uttar Pradesh. If, as Mr. Jain says, the Mahant was keeping to himself, he was largely, confined to his room, how come even his personal security officer, the Y category security that he was being provided, how come even they did not sense that something was wrong?
Zakat, there are many questions and very few answers, and because of this only I am continuously saying one thing, that we should wait for the post-mortem report to come out. We should wait for the inquiry report to come out, because it is too early to say anything on this subject. Because we know it very well that not only the Sant community, but each and every Hindu living in a country, or I'll say pan world, everybody is stunned, because we know it very well when a person enters into Sant Samaj, when he or she takes a sannyas. I mean, that person does all the pindan, then he or she enters into Sant Samaj and he becomes a Sant Mahatma. And he was one person, a very, very powerful person, very rightly said. Couple of days back, he met Deputy CM also. So he had an access to all the power centers of state and as well as of center. So there are many questions, but it is too early to say or comment on all those questions, because so many speculations are going on.
No,
so
ma'am, what about the Y category security, ma'am? Even the personal security officer, a constable who is assigned to him, even they did not know that something was wrong? that something was fishy?
Actually, what I have come to know is that he had retired to his private quarters to take some rest. So at that time, I think no security guard or any of the police person was with him.
Karthik,
so there are many things, as I said.
No, of course there are many unanswered questions, and we are just as much interested in finding out answers to those questions. But Karthik Chopra, let me ask you. I mean, you've been closely associated with the Nirmohi Akhada. I'm sure you've interacted many times with Mahant Narendra Giri as well as his disciples. Does this add up for you? I mean, I find it quite amazing that someone of his life experience, and I'm sure he has been through a lot in life, for, as the suicide note says, for an alleged fake photograph would take such a step.
Mahant was a very strong-willed person, and therefore all of our panchas in our akhada feel that this really requires detailed investigation. Very quickly, the post-mortem needs to be done. A number of hours have passed since his demise. Everybody involved in his security requires to be questioned. We need to get to the bottom of this. But at the same time, we are requesting all these opposition political parties, don't make a political issue out of this. This is a saint who has passed away. We of the saint community want to know why and how this has happened. Keep your political mileage, get it somewhere else, not here.
Now, Karthik has made an excellent point. And Ratan Sharda, I mean, you are acquainted with this case more than anybody else. When the Palghar Sadhu's lynching happened, one after another, there was demand for CBI inquiry. And at that time, the Maharashtra government was very, very unwilling to hand it over to the CBI. And I think eventually the court had to step in. Now the tables have turned. Now the opposition is saying, why not order a CBI inquiry? I know it's been 33, 34 hours. And Karthik is right. The postmortem should be revealed, because that's the first, marker to know whether it was suicide, whether there was foul play. That's the first basic thing that the public needs to know. But we haven't got that yet. But now the opposition is turning the tables around and saying, well, when you were demanding for CBI inquiry in Palghar lynching, then the same rules should apply in this case as well.
Zakka, first of all, let me tell you, whenever I was in the Palghar debates a lot of times, in all these debates about CBI inquiries, my question is, I have many times said this, what is the state police supposed to do? Only wave dandas when the crowds are there and not investigate any case? If all the cases are to be given to CBI, which is supposed to be a parent of the central government, then what sense does the police force make? Let's just have some civil guards and who will do the danda allowing. That is point one. So these people who did not allow the CBI inquiry then cannot demand CBI inquiry now. That is point one. This is pure politicization. For a person who have continuously ridiculed Hindu Dharma, who have ridiculed all sadhu sants, for them to speak about this really just supercilious and hypocritical. Coming to the main point. See, sadhus, I have not seen any sadhu doing suicide. Main reason is they have already given up their life. They have already accepted death. They have done their pindadan, as Anila ji has said. And if they at all they do, they take samadhi. There is nothing stopping Narendra Giri ji Maharaj from taking samadhi. He was chief of very powerful Akhada Parishad. He could have got this person removed easily for really that kind of the person that the people claim to be. My point is that sadhu has not been respected. They have not been taken care of by any government, whether BJP, Congress. I'll give an example. 2020, 11 sadhus have been murdered in the year 2020 itself. One case in Chitrakoot, two sadhus in Nanded, Palghar 2 sadhus, Sultanpur 1 sadhu was found hanging, Meerut beaten to death, Lakshmi-Sarai, Bihar, Naxals killed, then Mandya in Karnataka, three priests were beaten to death with boulders, and Karauli in Rajasthan, sadhu was set to fire. In Gonda, UP, he was shot dead. In Hamirpur, Himachal Pradesh, he was beaten to death. If this is the way we treat our sadhus, because they have no family to look after, they have no political affiliation. And then I think this has the sadhus, there's just addition of one more statistic.
No. But the problem there is, this is not just one more statistic. We are talking about the president of the All India Akhada Parishad.
Exactly.
Somebody who had so much access. I mean, like Keshav Prasad Maurya said in his own words, he treated him like a son.
Zaka, that's why I said I don't believe the suicide theory as yet. We don't know what has happened. As I said, as a powerful sadhu of Akhada, this person who is supposed to have blackmailed could have been easily removed. And if such power, he could have police to get it done. He was a sadhu for years together who had access to every powerful person. That is why it smells something fishy. But it's not issue of politics. It's issue of how the law is handled, how this particular case is handled.
Okay.
Not about politics.
Anila Singh ji, please respond. 2 points that Ratan Sharda made. One, according to him, there is no difference whether UPA is in power, NDA is in power. Sadhus, according to him, are treated just as badly in both regimes. He's listed out a whole bunch of statistics of the sadhus who've been killed over the last year or so. That's number one. And point number two, the question that I asked him as well, what would you say to the opposition who's now turning the tables on you and saying, you know, you asked for CBI inquiry in Palghar, we are asking for the same thing now in Prayagraj?
Is it some sort of a tug of war, according to the opposition? You said this thing, I mean, they can't see what happened in Palghar and what happened in Uttar Pradesh and Prayagraj. Is there any sort of comparison? Of course not. We all saw that how 2 sadhus were mob lynched and how the government reacted there. They were totally ignorant ignorant and indifferent to whole incident. And we know it very well that that sort of behavior we haven't seen in Uttar Pradesh, and Uttar Pradesh is being headed by a chief minister who himself is a yogi. He comes from Sant Samaj. This loss is of, I'll say that this is his personal loss, because Sant Samaj is his family. So if anybody says that CBI inquiry should be there or some sort of other inquiry should be there, and we do not have any trust in police administration here in Uttar Pradesh, I think that is utter nonsense. Because police administration in Uttar Pradesh is very efficient, and very soon, I'm telling you here, Zaka, very soon everything will be clear.
Okay.
Doodh ka doodh, pani ka pani ho jayega. Then what about the opposition? Then what they're going to say?
Absolutely. As and when that happens, ma'am, as and when that happens, you are well within your right to tell the opposition that, look, we got to the bottom of this case in whatever, 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours. You're absolutely well within your right. But until such time, I guess the opposition is also milking this for what it's worth as a political opportunity. And you know elections are close by, so this is exactly what they would do. But I want to go back to A.K. Jain and ask him again on the question of the PSOs that he had, the Y-level security. Shouldn't those people also be questioned as to what went wrong? I mean, if indeed there was a pattern of behavior that he used to retire into his private quarters and spend a lot of time, you know, brooding or thinking about this, then that's a pattern of behavior they should have recognized and alerted.
I agree with you. They should have realized it. His chelas should have realized it because he's surrounded by his chelas. The police people, the entire team is being interrogated. There is one particular constable, Ajay Singh, one who was very close to him. At least one constable should have been outside the bedroom where he was sleeping. He should have been on the duty. That is part of their duty, and they have failed in this. It is complete dereliction of duty, and action should be taken against these people. These people, they start taking their jobs lightly, and that is why such problems are created. He should have been there when the door was broken open. He should have been there when Narendra Giri was being brought down from the news. All this should have happened in the presence of police. They should have been the first people to have reported the matter to the local police station, but they didn't do it. Chelas did it. So action will have to be taken, and action will be taken. I am 100% confident that very stern action will be taken.
I'm glad to see a former police officer say this. I mean, absolutely, and I agree with you 100%. I mean, what were the PSOs around him doing? How were they so unaware of what was going on? Yes, he may have, moved back into his private quarters. He may have been taking rest. But surely, if a person is having suicidal tendencies and thoughts, then the people closest to him, and I'm not just holding the cops there, but his aides, the people who were closest to him, should have picked that up, Kartik Chopra. Surely to say that the 3 people who've been named in the suicide note are the only ones to blame, and I don't know, it's a matter of investigation. The investigation will find out if those 3 are the only ones involved. But what were the people around him doing?
So exactly, you see, the note itself and the contents need to be evaluated. People need to be questioned. The security personnel also need to be investigated and questioned. And the UP police is a very strong and effective force. So what we request the Honorable CM is depute your best officers and make an extremely strong team to supervise and oversee this investigation. And Honorable CM could also personally monitor this investigation, since he is also from the Sant Samaj. And we do not want to see one of our leaders of our Samaj be consigned to history like this. This is absolutely wrong. We want answers. The akhadas, all the akhadas want answers. We want to know that when somebody...
What do you say to Ratan Sharda's point that no matter who is in power, sants and sadhus are treated almost the same? That's his opinion.
Sants and sadhus are often do not get the amount of attention that they should get. And this to some extent is true. But coming back to this particular case, which is the circumstances of this case are different from the circumstances of earlier and other cases.
Okay.
We want to know that in this case, where there was a senior person like this with his personal security in a situation where supposedly he had been brooding for some time, why was this not brought to the attention of senior officers? And why didn't the senior officers themselves try and take a report on their protectee?
Yes.
Because if somebody is so important, the senior officers in charge of his protection detail must be monitoring
Ratan
exactly
Sharda,
what his situation
I think
is
Karthik
at any point in time.
Karthik has a point in as much as you can't compare this to Palghar. In this case, I think the people who are closest to him, his aides, the person security officers, etc., also owe a lot of answers.
Zakka, I definitely am not comparing. In fact, I told you about 11 cases. I also said that Palghar was a clear lynching case and police very peacefully handed over a person, though they had guns, to the crowd to kill them. So I am not comparing. I am just saying the number of cases I pointed out that we need to be more cautious. Yes, he was having a very strong security. He doesn't fall into that particular category. But the fact remains that the way we treat such cases is not correct, whether they are politicized, whether we demand a CBI inquiry for nothing at all, because police should be empowered to do such inquiries. And that is the main point. My point is that government should be very proud. Why do criminals feel so free to do it, and especially in a state where crime rate has gone up tremendously in the last 7 years?
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Ratan Sharda, Anila Singh, Karthik Chopra and Mr. Jain, thanks very much for joining us. Hopefully, like I said, the first most important marker that needs to be made public, and that'll give us an idea of the nature of this incident, whether it was a suicide, whether there was foul play involved, is the post-mortem. And the sooner the doctors and the medical staff can put it out, the better it is for everyone. Let me now move on to the other part that we're focusing on. US President Joe Biden, in fact, made his debut today at the United Nations General Assembly. His first address touched upon several key issues, including what's happened in Afghanistan, relations with China, and of course the way he sees the role of the Quad. In his speech, Biden once again reaffirmed his stand on the withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan, justifying that decision. He's also pushed for democracy as a key route to maintaining peace in Afghanistan. He also said that the United States will continue to fight terror and use military force as a last resort. Speaking with reference to China, he said that the US does not want a Cold War and instead is ready to push for peaceful relations with Beijing. But he did emphasize on ties with Quad nations, including India. Biden has assured assistance to combat climate change as well as to battle COVID.
My new administration helped lead the world toward a more peaceful, prosperous future for all people, and facing the threat of terrorism as it stands today. We've ended 20 years of conflict in Afghanistan, and as we close this period of relentless war, we're opening a new era of relentless diplomacy, of using the power of our development aid to invest in new ways of lifting people up around the world, of renewing and defending democracy, of proving that no matter how challenging or how complex the problems we're going to face, government by and for the people is still the best way to deliver for all of our people. We're working with our allies toward a new strategic concept that will help our alliance better take on evolving threats of today and tomorrow. We elevated the Quad partnership among Australia, India, Japan, and the United States to take on challenges ranging from health security to climate to emerging technologies. We're engaging with regional institutions from ASEAN to the African Union to the Organization of American States to focus on people's urgent needs for better health and better economic outcomes. We are re-engaged at the World Health Organization and working in close partnership with COVAX to deliver life-saving vaccines around the world. We rejoined the Paris Climate Agreement, and we're running to retake a seat in the Human Rights Council next year at the UN. Make no mistake, the United States will continue to defend ourselves, our allies, and our interests against attack, including terrorist threats, as we prepare to use force if any is necessary.
And on that note, we will be having extensive coverage of the Prime Minister's visit to America. He will be addressing the United Nations General Assembly. There will be the first in-person Quad Summit and, of course, a separate bilateral, the first time ever in person with Joe Biden. So all of that, Modi in America, the biggest coverage will be right here on CNN News 18. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you again tomorrow night, same time.